Hello everybody, I'm the Health, the Hero Game channel, and welcome back to the New Order, the Last Days of Europe, and to a new playthrough. We're playing as the People's Revolutionary Council. So let's have a wee read of, well, their current state. In the wake of the West Russian War and the West Russian Revolutionary Front's collapse, Alexander Vasilevsky, I don't know how you pronounce that, organised the retreat from the Mozhizek line. After the defeat, Alexander took up the task ensuring the Red Army would survive no matter what, gathering all the men that would follow him. He set out to regroup on the Mongolian steppe where the Luftwaffe could not reach them. There, he hoped to regroup on the steppe, pushing out from the east to west. His aim was to avoid the food scarcity and bombing that those who went north with Voroshilov suffer now. Fortunately, the Imperial Japanese Army was advancing upon these lands already. With the collaborators, the Japanese imperialists would claim all of Mongolia, and the Red Army abandoned the Mongolian people to the exploitation and deprivation. Could he rejoin with his brethren in the WRRF if he did so? An easy alliance was made with the remnants of the Mongolian army, the Mongolian and Tuvan people. All would be treated equal by the Red Army, but the Red Army would have primacy over all else. This was the era of warlords, and there would be no other compromise in this regard. At first, the bond of mutual destruction by imperialists, a mad king, a rogue army, and the madman exploiting Bukharin's legitimacy for his paranoid insanity kept the Revolutionary Council united in purpose. Tensions mount as opportunities now arise to end this period of stagnation. Therefore, the Revolutionary Council has its attention drawn in two directions. The Russians, made up entirely of the Red Army veterans, wish to return to the homeland and restore Soviet order upon the warlords. The Mongolians, who hold solidarity with the Tuvans, desire to push against the puppets of the sphere. They sense weakness now that Mengjiang is torn apart in open rebellion and see this as a perfect opportunity to unite the nation. If Alexander is to keep the council whole, he must navigate the desires of both groups. It will be no easy task. The Russians and Mongolians are both proud people, and they have every right to be, for we are unconquered. We are unconquerable. Let us proceed forward. It's not a collection of separate peoples, but a Soviet people. So maintain the interests of Russian, Mongolian and Tuvan people, favour a slow approach or rapid conquest. With the legitimacy of Bukharin's Siberian plan and some of the architects of it, rebuild industry to equip the Red Army with modern weaponry. When and how should the army become subordinate to the citizens of the council? Should it all unite Russia is made whole once again? Onwards, okay. So let's start with the Eastern conflict. The People's Revolutionary Council has established itself and has a fair amount of control of the western fringes of Mongolia. However, we wish we could say the same for the rest of the nation, as it has come under the yoke of Mengjiang. Nothing more than proxies for the Japanese imperialists and the Chinese lapdogs. In spite of that, not all hope is lost, and light can be seen at the end of the tunnel. Under the leadership of Jajin Testenbal, the Mongolians have risen up once again to drive their oppressors out of their rightful lands. They might be facing Mengjiang and therefore the entire co-prosperity sphere, but the hope of liberation never fades away. These times are equally important for the Council as well. We must seek to find out our approach will be, and whether we will come to the rescue of the revolutionaries or remain alone in their struggle for survival. Aid to Mongolia. Let's start. Right, we have a couple of research slots, so let's go ahead and start with getting the 1958 rifle, since it's already 4 years out of date, and we'll go ahead and grab the military construction 2. Actually, no, let's not grab that. Let's grab the batch production methods too. Right, we start off with how many divisions? 6 divisions. One of them is actually a helicopter division, and we have an untanked division as well. That's interesting. And we'll get them to the border. Alexander can be our field marshal, and Isa, he's a cavalry. We have some pretty decent generals here. Isa can come in, and we'll start with a couple of civilian factories, I think. Proceeding, shall we? Oh, far from home. Do you want a cigarette? The soldier asked his new friends in the platoon. My name is Vasily. These are quite rare. We smuggled them in from Mongolia. You would be surprised at the comforts the Japanese enjoy in Ulaanbaatar. The youngest man, barely over 20 years old, quickly took one, followed by another soldier. All three eagerly sat down in the tent, and as Vasily carefully lighted the cigarettes with the improvised lighter, seemingly from Soviet era, he tried to start a discussion. In the Council's army, there was one question that guaranteed interesting and diverse answers. Where do you come from? After exhaling a large cloud of smoke, the youngest man began speaking in broken Russian. My name is Nergu, and I am actually from here, Mongolia. Someone's voice was heard from the back. Now that's rare. Nergu continued anyway. Joining the army was the first time I went anywhere outside my village. My parents both died flying the Japanese when I was quite young. Isn't that died fighting the Japanese, not flying? I was quite young, but a woman brought me to safety of the Red Army, which I felt obligated to join years later. It was the turn of the oldest officer to speak. Have you heard the tale of the 226th Battalion? As the Nazi army spread through Eastern Europe, encircling and crushing entire divisions, the 226th was caught unprepared somewhere in the plains of Belarus. We were encircled, yet hundreds escaped across the German lines, retreating eastwards and pledging to never look back. That is exactly what we did, much like the Great War. I was the commander of that battalion, and here I am. Vasily, open and social, as always, took the freedom to speak for himself. I'm from the city of Omsk. As you can imagine, the unity was then called in to defend Mongolia, and you know the rest. I'm just as eager to return to my home. There's little we can do other than fight our way there. They find unity in their differences. Okay, cool. So, the Red Army, army modernization, monthly change of 1%. So the remnants of the Red Army that settled with us in Mongolia are fierce and tenacious, but they are also sorely under-equipped, and what weapons they do have are increasingly obsolete. We must take action to modernize and improve these forces if we are to secure victory in the future. So it looks like we can spend command power or army experience to lower and increase all these bonuses. So that's going to be interesting, and then we can finish the army modernization once it gets to 100%, which gives us plus 15 bonus to all military branches. Interesting. We also have the political struggle. Click on the states for further interactions. That's not my states. The state is controlled by the military. I can revoke the ownership, and then we can give the land to the citizenry or the military by doing with Tuva. So right now the army's power and loyalty is over 80% each, and civilian power is at 30, but their loyalty is at 60%. I'm going to have a wee event in a second. The frontier between the council and the autonomous territory of Mengjiang, while in legal terms non-existent, is in fact defined by a series of checkpoints, roads and natural landmarks running across western Mongolia. While this is clearly not the optimal area for an army to go through, we do not know to what extent Mengjiang will go if they assert their control over Mongolia once again. Thus, we must use this window of opportunity where we are not threatened by the Japanese puppets on the frontier to fortify it. Using knowledge from the great wars of the Soviet Union and the skirmishes we have had with rival Mongolian governments, we can start installing defensive installations to protect us. Small forts, hideouts where the troops can't be seen, and other similar constructions will be built. Should Mengjiang push further and threaten our existence as a whole, we must be prepared. So West Mongolia gets one landfall. Just waiting for this. Aid to Mongolia. Presidium has received an urgent request for aid on behalf of the nascent Mongolian People's Republic, self-declared. As Mengjiangese troops move into the borderlands, the Republic at this stage, more of a guerrilla movement, is almost certainly doomed to defeat if other socialist powers do not intervene. And few and far between are those still friendly to the Red Banner in this portion of Russia. Debate of the precise form of aid to be sent to Mongolian PR remains unclear. However, our already stretched military resources cannot long afford to sponsor a foreign conflict, even if it will prove a distraction to our strategic rival in the region. In addition, army generals are deadlocked as to the precise form of aid we should send to them. The Mongolians favour direct movement of troops, armed with as light an armament load we can provide. The Mongolians to harden their battle readiness. The catch, of course, is that these men will consist entirely of Mongolian battalions operating independently of the Red Army. Alexander's Red Army generals propose a shipment of weapons instead. They argue that the weapons will do little good in the hands of poorly trained Mongolians, and direct transfusion would be more helpful to the war effort in the long run. Of course, a sizable detachment of the Presidium supports total inaction, which as the debate continues is looking an increasingly attractive option. I don't have the 500 anti-tank equipment to send them. I don't really have the manpower, so send our regards. I'm sorry, Mongolia. You're left to defend yourself. Oh, days. The modern bogatyr. Of all tales of the Russian anarchy, there stands but one, as has spread from the frozen lands of the Far East to the city of Kostroma in the west, and even deep into the lands of the Nazi Empire. The story of a wanderer from parts unknown who brings justice with them as they walk the desolate roads of old Russia. This wanderer has come to be one of the greatest enigmas in all of Russia. Little is known about this enigma. Some reports They are a former ranger of the Ural Guard, a man who left his home to bring justice to the worst of Russia. Others tell tales of a former Wehrmacht soldier consumed by guilt and under a self-imposed exile as a penance to the people he wronged. A few scathing reports tell of a widow from a destroyed village seeking to bring to others the justice she was denied. Whispers in the east speak of an American volunteer from the West Russian War, stuck in a land not his own, but still doing good where he wandered. And in the bars of Siberian cities, one can always find strange and likely drug-induced tales of man from the future come back to save the world. Whatever their true identity and whatever their purpose in the corpse of the Soviet Union might be, all that is truly known is the kindness they have shown to the people, so used to violence and death. Tales are told of the wanderer holding off entire bandit raiding parties single-handedly, liberated slaves from Perm, tell of an angel of light freeing them from their shackles before disappearing into the night, and rumours have come from Moscow of one-man raids on anti-strongholds. In the end, while many of these deeds are undoubtedly fictitious, the actions of this hero, this modern-day bogatyr, have lit a fire of hope in the hearts of even the most trampled upon in Russia. Interesting story, if nothing else. Right, anyways, we can get to this now. So the army loyalty is decaying by -1 each month, and civilian loyalty is decaying by -1 each month. Decay is dependent on the number of states controlled by the estate versus our total number of states. Because of our army relationship, we are getting the army speed bonus, conscription bonus, like their bonuses are pathetic right now. Because of our civilian relationships, we are gaining this. So what we can do is, we can enforce government authority, which gives us some stability, but we lose daily political power gain. We can pursue favours from the military, which greatly and slightly increases army loyalty and power, but costs us -2 stability every week. And that spear's been named as Mr. H's successor. We can do the same for the civilian, but the opposite happens. You know, the civilian stuff increases, not the military. We can weaken the power of the other two. We lose stability for doing all these, by the looks of things. We can empower them, which increases their power alone. So yeah, well, I think we're going to try and keep that pretty much balanced. I think that's probably the best thing to do. Internal factionalism. The council is well divided between two factions, the Russians and the Mongols. Whichever faction has more power will decide which path the People's Revolutionary Council will take. The Russians are those of the Red Army, who fled during the Great Patriotic War to seek refuge in Mongolia, now trapped with no way to return home. Alexander and his Russians have a goal of uniting the Soviet Union under the Red Army, yet native opposition has opposed these goals. The Mongol faction would rather stay in Mongolia and preserve a Mongol nation, opposing goals of unification. This group aims to defend against Russian hegemony and the creation of a Mongol-led civilian government. Currently, the Russian faction is marginally dominant. And of course we've got the unification and the raiding as always, and then the legacy of the Siberian plan and the warlord development sections of decisions. Right, anyways, let's prepare the men. The threat of war begins to loom over the People's Revolutionary Council, and everyone can sense it. In the streets of Kizil and Uliastai, the calm before the storm is apparent. People prepare for the worst, and so should the army. As it stands now, the military is a formidable force, almost reminiscent of the glory days of the Far Eastern Military District. However, if it is to stand up against a Japanese-backed army, something more will be needed. To ensure that we have the upper hand, the possibility of an all-out war, mobilization must begin. Drawing from what little manpower the desolate Mongolian steppes have to offer us, more men must be recruited and trained. The last thing we would want is to enter a great nation-deciding conflict, only to be overwhelmed by the unexpected advantage. Base stability and manpower for doing that focus. Nice. 7 divisions, one's been cut off. Mongolian People's Front. The thing is though, they actually have a decision down here. The relentless attack gives them attack on core territory. That's nice. Air raid successful, death from above. Yeah, they have begged Japan. So destabilize the Ulaanbaatar rebels. They have to do that, complete death from above, so they have to do all that stuff first. And then if they're losing, then they can call in the Empire of Japan to help them win it. No, come on, you can do this. I have faith in you to hold on to this conflict for as long as you can. Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll take the infantry attack factor, infantry defense factor, because we're mainly going to be infantry. The organization regain is definitely what we'll go for, and probably the air assault attack, because we are going to get planes out at some point. So, the path of peace. If he were a soldier, perhaps Jibin Batmonk would be more hardened to, more willing to tolerate the realities of conflict. As it was, he could barely stop himself from weeping at what he saw. Here he was, in his cherished native Uves province, yet this was not the one he remembered. He remembered it being a land of relative plenty, of a bright future, and tough but happy people. Now they were starving, amputees struggling to get by, and most of all, a seemingly universal feeling of hopelessness. Had the war really changed so much? And this was what it was like here. Where there had been little direct conflict, he shuddered to think of what it must be like in areas of Japan and the collaborators had actually occupied. Even with that said, however, he wondered if there was really no peaceful solution to the trouble Mongolia faced. Even if they had helped bring chaos to Mongolia, surely it was possible to talk things out with the other factions. They were all Mongols, after all, heirs of a great legacy and destined for a bright future. He just wished anyone else would want a peaceful solution. As always, his voices went unvoiced and unheard. Perhaps peace was just a pipe dream. I think I'm going to favour the Russians because we get an elite army, which changes us from basic training to combat schooling. And I just feel like that's probably the better one to go for. Because that just changes us from segregation to equal rights. We get non-core manpower, to be fair. Let's favour the Russians. Ever since the foundation of the People's Revolutionary Council, the people at its helm became clear, and they were all Russian officers. The Mongolian authorities were slowly sidelined, seeing as they could not offer much and were incompetent or even corrupt. Despite the calls for equality and respect to the Mongolians, which are already granted to the great extent, the experienced Red Army officers from the days of the Great Patriotic War must continue to lead the state as long as it's still in danger. We should also not forget that there is a sizable Russian population in Tuva, comparable to the sparse settlements of Mongolians in their lands. They should be given benefits so as to earn their trust in the council. Now, I'm just wondering, do I give the Tuva district to the citizenry? Because I think we want to keep this balanced. Because we get bonuses from each. So let's go ahead and give Tuva to the citizenry. Because I think that should cancel out the... Yeah, this should change. Because they'll have control now. This war's still ongoing, but Ulaanbaatar is... Ulaanbaatar? Batar? Oh, it's fallen. Does that mean we're going to have peace? Right, they're still holding on, but their army is running out of manpower. And we need them to not exist anyways, the joy, like to start a war, so... The Siberian War was a tragedy for all sides involved. Central Siberian Republic and Yagoda's government endlessly clashed, and the result was nothing more than many deaths and the collapse of both states. The People's Revolutionary Council remained out of this bloody affair, but it did not look away from the front lines. In fact, we kept a close eye on the conflict, and aside from ensuring we were never threatened by either side, we learned many lessons from it. One of the most important ones was that of the military tactics. Yagoda's soldiers fought using the tactics of the old Red Army, and so did the CSR for the most part. This can be particularly useful as we find ourselves on the verge of war once again. Our generals must closely examine the battles of the Siberian War and the strategies used, so that when the time comes to fight, we have a better chance. And it gives us army experience. Nice. I can use that to possibly start sorting out some of that negative infantry bonuses that we've got. Oh, dawn settles over the plains like a whisper. The sky, untainted by clouds, glows faintly on its shimmering edges like plate metal heated to boiling point. Morning is coming to Mongolia. The company standing watch over the small town awaits its orders in the morning. Even here, far behind the front line, there is work to be done. The village's water wells must be cleared, the market checked for suspicious items, the home of the old Bilagoon checked for what appears to be some kind of infestation. Always there is work, and with it, purpose. Names are read in rudimentary barracks, patrols deployed, billets issued. Men and the occasional woman laugh and joke in the manner of all young people, sharing tea and treats with the children who run up to them. There's no harm in sharing, especially since combat rations would be intolerable in any other circumstance. The children, at least, are enamored and adorable. Old Bilagoon watches the patient Red Army guardsmen as they take apart the old cellar he always had trouble with, and for the first time he wonders if they will still stay. After the great struggle they speak of has concluded. It's not an occupation, after all, if you truly do belong. Officer Adrovich is busy studying the village's walls when the order comes. His face stiffens, and then he is busy barking orders to his command team. For the next day or so, the company moves into frenzied life, packing, repurposing, and giving away what cannot be carried. By the time dawn next touches Mongolia, the company is gone. So I like how they can still do this. They shouldn't be able to do beg Japan though, because Mongolians People's Front, that's not us. So relentless attack's gonna help them attack me. I don't know if this class is core territory then. It's not. Is Mongolia, is this part even considered core? That is. For glory once more. Aldar Khan was a beautiful land full of tough animals and tougher people. As Batim Droz, I don't know how to pronounce it, was found out, though even the toughest of people had their limits. The number of people he had been seen begging for food or for money, for anything while touring Aldar Khan was unbelievable. His homeland was no longer recognizable to him, and it was all the fault of those damn Japanese. It was the Japanese who had killed these people with the help of those traitorous collaborators. It was the Japanese who stole their resources for their own profit, and it was the Japanese who had torn his country apart, pitting brother against brother. One day they'd get what was coming to them. His fellow Mongols deserved that much. For today, however, he would continue to observe and let his rage build. When the time came, he would destroy the invaders without a second thought. Revenge had to be exacted. Even if the revenge necessitated further suffering, mercy was never an option. I'm going to go ahead and enforce the government authority because it gives us stability. Right now we're actually in negative stability. The Presidium Supreme Soviet has defeated the Buryat Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic. So Irkutsk has won. It's a pretty nice little bonus they have to begin with, like. Assassination attempt on Edward. Of course, internal factionalism is fine. We'll just minimise that for the time being. Scavenge for loots. I don't know what to do that now. So our area that we'll be fighting in is actually this area here. So we've got Tomsk, Novosibirsk, Kemerovo, Oryota, I don't know, Krasnoyarsk, Siberian Black Army. I don't think you're not part of it. The war comes to the council. Wait, what? When the Union collapsed, we fled there. This wretched corner of Mongolia, devoid of anything worth having, became our home. We reorganized our shattered divisions, made repairs as best we could to the infrastructure that had not fallen prey to banditry or bullet or bombs, built homes and lives of our own in the shadow of turmoil to the north and east. It was not much, but what else could we do? In the same vein, it's also inevitable that the Mengjiang Republic and their Japanese backers would turn their envious eyes towards the last corner of old Mongolia, not yet under the yoke of Japanese lapdogs. The entirety of the defensive plan has centered in this central belief, that one day Kalgan would come for our piece of the steppes, and yet it might have proved insufficient. And as for the bullets flying you across the border with Mengjiang, so painstakingly secured, Mongolian divisions have already begun advancing across it, in what appears to be an attempt to remove us altogether. The Red Army awaits them, and the sum total of our military industry behind it. We must find our end here. We changed our tree, but I don't want to change my tree. Oh, we just get another bit added on. Okay, bypass. God damn it, we don't get that bonus now. And we don't get that bloody factory. Bypass us all, the last preparations. We don't even get the war support. Strike first has been bypassed as well. Okay, this looks like we're here now, so we can build some more land forts. That's right, yeah. Let's backline defenses. Defense is not always just fighting the enemy advance on the front lines. The council must be prepared for every possible scenario in the war. Extensive preparations in case of general enemy breakthrough would be prudent. By organising defence lines not right on the front, but further behind as far as the lands of Tuva, we can be more sure that we will never be in immediate danger of complete collapse. These fortifications will be built based on previous knowledge, and combined with the experience from the first battles with Mengjiang, While some in the High Command have argued that this would mean diverting precious resources from the main front, for most, it's better to be safe than sorry. The thing is, though, we currently have the upper hand because they're not sitting on the bloody border. Go, 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 go! We have a cavalry division right there. No, don't attack them. What we need to do is try and encircle their divisions. They only have, what, 7 to 9. So what we really do need to do is actually encircle them. Okay. The fallen men... No, not the fallen. Where the hell did you read fallen there, then? The men of the 14th People's Revolutionary Squadron sat around the campfire, full of distinct aura as the men tried to ignore the spaces where their fallen comrades usually sat. Gone were the days of laughter and brotherhood. They had all lost someone, a friend, a mentor. Now I know the casualties are always hard, said Dmitri the officer, a more brazen young man than usual among Red Army, but losses always happen, it's part of war. Nikita, the more aged veteran of the Patriotic War, stood up shouting, "This time it was preventable. You're the ones who give the orders, and you're the ones who are responsible for almost getting us encircled. We could have all died back there." "My orders," growled Dmitri, "were to hold your ground and fight. You cowards were the ones who ran into that ambush." "Even worse," yelled Nikita. "If we had stayed, we would have been surrounded by an enemy 5 times our size. Face it, Dmitri, you're not made to be an officer. It's time we elect a new one. Field replacement is a core tenet of the council, after all." Dmitri sighed. "Fine, if you want a new officer, replace me. None of you know how to lead a dog, much less a squad of 15 men. I'll be sure to remember this when I die of your stupidity." Oh, damn, a lot of their divisions have just appeared there. But we've just pushed them back. Now, they better not be able to bring Japan in. It doesn't look like they can beg Japan, that's fine. Right, you just keep pushing for. Oh, they pushed it back. There's not even a division sitting there. Yeah, let's fall back there. And let's evacuate Western Mongolia. We survived battle after battle, making our stand in every town and village as the troops of the enemy made their way into the depths of Mongolia. As much as we have done everything we can to ensure the survival of our lands, it could all soon come crashing down. The army and the council, under severe pressure, constantly being routed and forced to retreat further. This seems like a dire situation, but there is one situation, the final resort. To visit mountainous land distinct from the rest of Mongolia, conquer it will never be practically easy for any power. If we were to stop wasting resources and men in defending every inch of Mongolia and reorganize into a small and easily controllable territory at Tuva, then perhaps the People's Revolutionary Council could have the chance to survive the war. But we're not going to bloody do that, though. Right, you need to get to Moron. And it's up to these pair to come in behind, I think. Actually, we might be able to start coming in there. I need you down here, though. You've done your job, chill. I want you to come back. Okay, there is 2 cavalry divisions in there. They are retreating as well. That's not allowed to stand. Oh, that's actually quite a nice one. And the endless struggle against Mengjiang continues.
now more intense than ever. While we have often engaged in wars, conflicts and skirmishes with our government, never before has the situation been so critical to the future of Mongolia. Across the mountains and deserts, we fight with everything we have, yet it still seems far from enough to ensure our survival and eventual victory. It's time, as we are in an extremely dangerous position, to truly give 100% of our potential in resources, military power and morale, as small as those things may be, for the defence of the Council. The army shall be given the orders to not take one step back and defend every inch of the soil against Japanese puppets. No matter what, we cannot afford to lose this war. And that only takes 4 days. And guess what? We're slipping on in. If we can take down those 2 divisions, that's going to be very beneficial for us. Yeah, that's cool. Alright, increased war propaganda efforts. The population of the People's Revolutionary Council is quite obvious, hesitant about taking part in the war. Even if that war is about their own survival, some still don't do everything they can to help their government survive. We want to ensure that every citizen gives 100% of their potential to contribute to the war effort. Propaganda is always a good solution. It has been tried many, many times and often succeeded in rallying a population. The best example we should look up is to the old Soviet Union, that despite all their military failures, used propaganda for the time it was founded until it fell to the Nazi menace. Basing ourselves on the old communist tactics, we will begin spreading posters, slogans, and more to encourage the Russians, Tuvans, and Mongolians to take part in the war. Wherever they join the army, help in the factories, or just spread the message, they will be helpful. Yes, we've got them. Right, what I want is, I want you to come back in here. I want this cavalry division to try and maybe fling out themselves around there. Let's just mop this up. Does leave opportunity for them to push forward, but I kind of want to bait them in a little bit. Plus I do want to hurry up and deal with those 2 divisions, so. Come on, they should be dying soon. Oh look, a division's taking the bait. It likes to expand the conscription. The days go by and the pool of available manpower to use in the front line shrinks by a bit with the passage of time. More and more men die in their brave fight of the Far East. Some to protect their homelands, but many simply to survive. We have already taken extensive measures to ensure we have an adequate number of men ready to call into the battlefield, but even that seems to not be enough. Conscription must be expanded once more to cover anyone who is able to serve for the army. Young men who may not even be considered adults yet shall be recruited. The older generation that might even faintly remember the events of the Civil War will look to be drafted as well. Even women that wish to volunteer for the good of the country will be welcomed. As the saying goes, desperate times call for desperate measures. Right, how are these divisions not dead yet? Right, I think we're going to have to just back off and hope that they just... I'm going to try and push out a little bit. I need to get some organisation back on them boys, so... They are completely cut off, so... I really don't see how they're holding on. I think we're going to have to deal with that cavalry division in a minute. I don't really want to push forward. I want to deal with these 2 cavalry divisions. They're taking up so much of my time and effort. As for a ceasefire, no. During the Great Patriotic War, Bulgaria and Soviet Union amassed a large army to fight the Germans. While in the end it was not enough to achieve victory, its scattered remains and their equipment survived in some places. The same thing happened in the lands that Council occupies. Tuva Mongolia saw the deployment of the Red Army troops, and Alexander's proud units raced to take control of them before Japan did. While this was obviously not entirely successful, these areas are still filled with old depots containing arms and ammunition. These resources, long forgotten, must be brought back to the light and be used by our armies, as they must use everything at their disposal for the good of the council. Right, these divisions that die in here. I don't understand how they are physically still being supplied. They've been in there for ages. And they're moving forward. Like, how are you still, like, fighting on? Just run for the capital. No. Oh, what? Seriously? I take the capital and then Japan gets called in? Are you serious? Wow, that is absolute baloney. Night covers the steeps from burning Kalgan to the hustle of Kizil. The bickering party presidium is still in session, trying and desperate themselves to work on the logistics of a defensive war as outgrown its lines of supply and strategic scope. The squabble over what to do with this swath of territory the Red Army has been foisted upon, without any form of administrative structure to control it, is endless, exhausting in its intensity. Outside it is quite night as the military transports to the front have halted under the threat of approaching sandstorms. Kizil itself churns on a buzz of nascent industry and commerce work, and the two people under snow-capped mountains and between their silver rivers slumber and work through the night as they have done for centuries. It is a beautiful, moonlit, clear as an untouched pool in a mountain cave. There's nothing obstructing the bomb sites far overhead. The flight of the Mitsubishi manufactured heavy bombers make it as far as the city centre before they are ripped apart by anti-aircraft defences, but it is far, far too late for hundreds of workers and households, and the party prison itself is nearly destroyed by shrapnel. What is more distressing still is the wreckage of the bomber squad. The insignia of the rising sun is bold and visible to all sifting through the ruins. The pretense of non-interference has been dropped. And I'm about to get a division to die, but on the plus side, I'm going to see if oh, we're going to have to offer them that bloody peace deal, aren't we? In the towns of West Mongolia, people probably celebrate and wave the flag of the council for its ensured of freedom. At least it has ensured it for now. But the countless skirmishes between the Red Army and the enemy forces around the heavily guarded border areas will still hold their ground. The army of Mengjiang has been unable to penetrate our strong defences and has been slowly getting more and more exhausted by the constant struggle it is to go through, merely to control its territories. Now that we have survived against all odds without losing an inch of land, we could end this conflict. The autonomous government from Mengjiang shall be offered a truce by the People's Revolutionary Council, maintaining the status quo in Western Russia. If they are sensible, they will see what this opportunity can bring and grab it. We didn't lose any land, did we? No, we didn't. The Mongolian Civil War. Shocking events the world watches in awe. The remnants of the Red Army based in Mongolia declared war upon the co-prosperous sphere of Mongolia and won. The peace treaty stipulates that the sphere will not interfere in the Red Army's activities in the east and can sure sign of the expansionist goals of its leader, General Alexander. Military man and one of the finest generals of the decrepit Soviet Union now turns his attention to the northern factories of central Siberia, while many once thought his band of Red Army survivors little more than a horde of starving Mongolian bandits. It would now seem that the many warlords vying for supremacy over the shattered Union now have yet another opponent. Good. What we'll do is, we'll divert our attention to you. I feel like we're probably going to take you first. The Siberian Black Army is by far going to be the hardest. Oh, they have a new little portrait. The last to defend the Mengjiang autonomous government are the young and very, very old. Armed Versaka variants, as old as the government itself, these brigades have managed almost heroic resistance to the overwhelming intensity of the Red Army's advance, managing orderly retreat, even as their trained counterparts dissolved around them. Children struggle with guns almost as large as they are. Aged shepherds complain of neck aches as they pack chaff at their shoulders, and yet somehow they have managed to stay organised. As supply lines from Manchuria and the Central Plain break down under stress and refugees overwhelming the roads, the brigades too falter and stumble.
The final concentrated battle of Mongolian War is less of a battle of more of an encirclement than quick march. 3,000 brigadiers are captured in a single night as a swath of front line is destroyed by Red Guard tactical maneuvers. Most are captured with a fight, and it becomes apparent that even the last vanguard of Mengjiang have barely enough ammunition between them to destroy a force a tenth their size. The Central Committee sends vain and desperate messages to Tokyo and Nanjing, to Hishking, Amur and Magadan in its final hours. But a bleeding heart can only muster the strength to beat on for so long. As the remaining brigades fall apart and break, Mengjiang accepts the inevitable. Its final organised act sends its head leadership to refuge in Beijing just before the final surrender is triumph. So then, a triumph. Can you grab this first? Because that gives us minus on the consumer goods. Okay, peace at last in the aftermath of war has been bypassed, so we now have a bit of a tree here, and then obviously we have the red spring, so we have to wait until the winter is over and spring Rasputitsa has ended. Anyways, let's read this and then we'll call it a day. Alexander fiddled impatiently with his cigarette. He'd never made his dislike of such people in the Politburo a secret, and he certainly wasn't going to start now. Chief among these people was Tesedabal. The Mongolian had never learned the manners appropriate to a mere civilian. Now he and his cronies sat across the table. Right in front of the map exercise he just began to plan. Had they no sense of propriety? Stabbing the stud in his chair, the old Russian leaned close. His hands trembled upon the lapels of his uniform as he straightened a loose collar. And what is this guy can offer you? The Mongolians offered thin-lipped smiles in return, saying nothing. He drew a dossier from his suit and nodded to him. Frowning, Alexander flicked through the pages. His hand trembled even more intensively as he reached the end of the brief document. A cold numbness settled upon his chest. The general paused, unsure of what came next would fall with appropriate impact. I will never sanction independence for the Mongolian deviationists. I care not if you are among them. I care not if the devil himself is in your ranks. I will not approve. His heart racing like the rush to Moscow had never ended. He sat back. The Mongolians looked at him, faces unchanged. They'd been expecting this. He rubbed his temples, suddenly far older in appearance, and then he spoke. You have not heard the last of this. You'll have to break my people's will first. We'll go with that one. I don't know what those options really do for us, but learn from mistakes, old Union remnants. Anyways, we'll get into that next episode. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I shall be back very soon for some more. Until then, take care. Shebang. The now.